Hi guys, welcome in to Dress It Up Buttons. I am Sara Ellis and I have a very fun project for you guys today using some of my favorite buttons. Dress It Up buttons, I say they are my favorite, but the truth is it's really hard to pick a favorite when it comes to Dress It Up buttons because there is literally a button for everybody, right? And the selection is not just like this, it's like this. There's a huge amount of buttons. Hey, Stacia, to choose from, and they have one for literally everybody, every mood. You know, I just can't even like running out of words as we see, but I did manage to narrow it down for today. So I do have a lot of favorites. There's no denying that, but I'd have to say that these are probably on the very top of my list when it comes to favorites from Dress It Up, because these really kind of speak to the vintage kind of vibe that I really love. I really enjoy vintage everything, vintage appliances, vintage furniture, vintage jewelry. I really have just a real love for that kind of thing. I love antique shopping and stuff like that. So these really speak to that when we are feeling a little nostalgic for things maybe. So what we have is Vintage Vogue. Love this. Whoops. And you guys, this has so much cool stuff in it. I'm going to use, there's a pendant in here, right? So it's not just buttons. There's a pendant in here. There's some little tassels in here. There are some great shank style buttons in here that you could sew onto something, or you could trim the back off and use them as flat backs. I'm going to show you everything that's in here. And we're going to use the pendant, and we're going to use some bead string and wire. We're actually going to make a necklace out of buttons. And so of course we need like some other buttons, and what do I have here but tiny micro buttons. I love the micro minis. These are so fun, and they come in such a huge variety of colors, and this is Tiny Victorian, and so they are very soft pastels that really kind of go with each one of the different vintage kind of nostalgic feeling buttons that there are. And there are more than just the Vintage Vogue, let me tell you. There is like a whole selection of ones that are along these lines that are really beautiful. So I'm excited to use these. We're going to use a little bit of everything, and we're going to create a necklace because I feel like jewelry with buttons is kind of one of those, and I said this last week too, but I feel like it is a it's like a gateway drug. What a terrible analogy. It's a transition, right? From those who either make jewelry and don't craft, or those who craft but don't make jewelry. There's a happy medium that happens when you start incorporating buttons into jewelry making, and I think that that's a really wonderful way to open up some ideas of creativity to people who may not be on, you know, both sides of that fence. And so I think Dress It Up buttons really kind of bridge the gap there. So your Dress It Up buttons can be used for your sewing, for your quilting, for your scrapbooks, for making jewelry, and for literally everything in between. So that's what makes Dress It Up buttons so phenomenal, and of course I'm a huge fan. But I use these buttons for everything, and not only do I use them for everything, but my daughters, both of my daughters, I have a son too, but he's not into buttons, but both of my girls are really into adding and embellishing and personalizing things, and Dress It Up buttons is a perfect way to do that. So enough of my gushing over the brand, but I just can't help it because it's good stuff, right? And so today we're using some bead stringing wire. We're going to be using some 19 strand gold color bead-along bead stringing wire. And if you are interested in grabbing some of this, you can grab this over on the Jesse James Beads website, and they have a deal going on. We have a deal going on, rather, I should say, because I work for both. $49 cart, you can get a free bead stringing wire, some 19 strand wire. So fill up your cart, add your bead stringing wire to it, and you're going to use the code 19 strand to get your free bead stringing wire. And I gotta tell you, the colors on these, there's the gold color and the silver color, and they're so warm and just beautiful and bright, and they ask to be exposed, right? Why would you want to cover that all up? So we're going to expose our bead stringing wire in our design today, so you're really going to get to see it and feel it, and it's going to become part of the piece. Okay, so to get started, you're going to need 30 inches, 2 strands of 30 inches of your 19 strand bead stringing wire in the gold color. I'm kind of mixing my metals with this, so you could do this in gold or with silver. But before we get to that, let's get down to it and let's look up close at our Vintage Vogue Dress It Up. Hi guys, there's Catherine, Rosanna, and Trisha, Marie. I'm so glad you guys joined me here on Dress It Up. It's always a fun time when we get to make things, right? Okay, so let's take a look at our tiny buttons first. So these are Tiny Victorian, and they're all in these really beautiful soft pastels. So there's some muted greens in here, some purples, some really, really soft pinks, and then some creamy colors. They're kind of like coffee creamer, if you will, colors that are in here, like really, really soft caramel shades. And I've dumped the ones out that we're going to use in this little container here. So we're going to use some of our Dress It Up buttons and then grab some crimps. I'm going to use some crimp tubes. You could use crimp beads, whichever. And so yeah, you need a lot of these, but a ton of these come in a package and we're definitely not going to use them up. So I'm going to have a lot of these left over for sure, that I can use for other things. And the tiny micro mini buttons come, I know I already said this once, but just now that you're kind of getting a look at them, they come in such a wide variety of colors. So you can get these literally in any color of the rainbow, but they have them in these really cool mixes. So there's like a tiny tropical buttons, there's a garden variety, there are several different varieties of these, and I love them. They're a little 2-hole button. You can glue these to something, you can sell them to something. We're going to use them in jewelry. And then we have the Vintage Vogue, and this is probably one of 4 or 5 different kind of nostalgia, vintage kind of feeling button packages that are available through Dress It Up. So let me open this one up and we'll look at all of the things that are in here, because this one is not limited to just buttons. Trisha says, can we get the mini buttons on JJB? You know what, Trisha, by the end of the day, I think I can get that situated for you. Just give me a minute and I think we can get that worked out. So I saw a question earlier that went by, and I was chattering on about something else and I didn't get a chance to answer it. So somebody asked, and I apologize for not seeing exactly who it was, but they asked about the shank style buttons. And so a shank style button has exactly this. It has a shank on the back, and you can trim the shank off of the back, and then you've got a flat back that you can glue down. And the question was, what kind of cutter do you use? Well, the answer to that question is I use a jewelry cutter tool. This is not the one that I use, but just as an example. So I don't use this one for anything other than using with my metals, just because I don't want to mess it up. But I have a plain black cutter that I normally use. It's shaped just like this, but it doesn't have it's not a flush cut. It's just a regular, like a nipper tool. And I use it strictly for cutting the shanks off of my buttons. So I don't use it for anything else. It keeps the blade nice and sharp. And that's what I do, just to kind of pop those off the back. For a lot of them, you can use a sharp pair of scissors. It does take a little extra, elbow grease to get them off if you use scissors, and it will over time kind of ruin your scissors. So I would designate a pair of scissors just for your Dress It Up buttons if that were the case. All right, so look at all the goodies that were in this one. So we do have shank style buttons. Like I said, we've got this little heart that's a lock, and then we have the key that goes for it, that goes with it. The key has a 2-hole here. So it doesn't have a shank on the back, but it does have the 2 holes. So you can either string this from something, or you can sew this down using the 2 holes that are up here in the top of the key, which is absolutely adorable. There is a crown flat back, which is super, super cute. Really good for any of your paper crafts or for your scrapbooking. There is a heart that has a beautiful flower on it. Oh no! Wanda says, who schedules a work Zoom meeting at the same time I'm on? How dare they? That's okay. Wanda will miss you, but you definitely catch the replay. All right, so there is a beautiful heart that's got a flower on it. This is a shank style button as well. And then of course, you know they have to add some of these little Jesse James beads tassels. And it's just really a beautiful addition to this mix. I think I really, really like that. So you can sew these on, you can attach them with jump rings or whatever it is that you're working on, right? You could even take the snip off the loop that's back here on the back, and you could glue these to your paper crafts if you wanted to. It's just a three-dimensional kind of thing that you can add to any of your crafts, as well as your jewelry, you guys, of course. And then these flowers are probably my favorite out of the entire mix. I don't know what it is about these, but I absolutely love them. Stacia says, I used a black pair of rounded cutters. Was that a mistake? Nope, not at all. It is not a mistake at all. You can use whatever works for you, right? Just be aware that if you're going to use your expensive cutters or your expensive scissors, you're going to dull that blade over time because you are cutting through quite a bit of material. So it's not really the same as snipping wire, right? So there are these little guys, and of course you can sew these on by sewing directly through the center, or you can glue them on to whatever you're working on, or you can stick a head pin through the center of them and use them as a tassel. I've done that. I made some really cute wine cork necklaces, and I used these on the bottom. They were really, really cute. And then last but not least, there is a beautiful pendant that is in here, and this is going to be the center of our necklace. So this is really going to be the focal piece for our necklace. And although it has silver metal on it, we are using the gold bead stringing wire. And so I'm just really kind of mixing my metals today. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I like to mix it up and keep it fun, right? Keep it a little bit different, something other than the expected, right? So the bead stringing wire, grab this over on Jesse James Beads website. I will work on getting those tiny Victorian buttons over on the site if possible. I will talk to Sarah as soon as we are done here and see if we can add those to the site so you guys can pick them up. And if you're interested in the Vogue, the Vintage Vogue, is that what it's called? Yeah, I always forget. I will ask her about that as well. All right, so last but not least, we are going to use some beads for this, and we're going to use some of the brand new Toho beads that are available over on Jesse James Beads as well. And these are from a three-tiered mix called Peach Sherbert. So I just thought this color was a really good way to kind of mix in some extra beads into this, but any of the Peach Sherbert beads from that three-tier would look really good with this as well. So just pick one and go with it. You can't go wrong. All right, so that's what we've got. Let me show you where we're going. Okay, let me move this out of the way. We're going to have to use the blue bead mat since we are using seed beads, but I'll try to keep everything together here. I'm going to dump out my tinies, these little micro minis, because they're just so cute. Make a place for our seed beads. Okay, so just so that you're going to get an idea of where we're going. I've already done one side of the necklace, so we're just going to repeat what I've already done on the other side so that we have two strands to our necklace. So we're going to take that 19 strand bead stringing wire, and we are going to fold it in half and loop it over or through the loop here. And then we're just going to create this kind of exposed wire mix of seed beads and these beautiful micro mini buttons, and then finish it off with an extra long part of the exposed, I almost said exposed bead stringing wire, because that gold color is just so pretty, right? It's just really, really beautiful. But the front of your necklace, you're really going to show off the beads and buttons. All right, so let's get started with that. So I've cut a 30-inch piece of our gold color bead stringing wire, and I'm just going to take the two ends together, find the middle. That's what we want to loop through the loop on the top of the pendant from our Vintage Vogue Dress It Up buttons. Okay, so there is the middle. I'm not going to use a crimp or anything else like that here. I'm actually just going to thread on a button and bring it down as close as I can. So I'm going to move these out of the way for just a second. I'm going to thread on one of these beautiful little green micro minis, and I'm going to thread each end through the two holes. Tracy says she covets the mini buttons. I do too. I love them so, so much. All right, so we've brought that down. And to keep this little guy in place, we're going to use a seed bead. You can see the next step was a seed bead. And for the seed bead, I'm going to take both strands through a seed bead. Now, this is going to be the part where it's going to take a little bit of extra patience because the seed beads are size 11, so they're really, really small. And we're working 2 strands of 19 strand through those seed beads. So it's going to take a little finessing. You might use your sentence enhancers, but I can promise you that 2 strands will fit through here. And I'm going to put mine going the same direction. You can crisscross these through your seed bead if you want to, but I feel like I just liked the way that it looked. I tried both, and I liked the way that it looked with both of them going through in the same direction better than crisscrossing. Okay, so just like I said, it's going to take a little bit of finessing and a little bit of patience. Oh my gosh. Watch me not be able to get them through. That would be my luck, wouldn't it? So just a little wiggling there, okay? And then once you get, see, you've got the very, very tip of those wires coming out. Then you can grab those with some tweezers or some pliers, right? I do caution though, when you use your tweezers and your pliers, you're going to end up fraying the end. So we're going to trim off as we go because you want to have a sharp end of your bead stringing wire to get through there. Trust me, once it starts to fray, you'll never get those through. All right, so we've brought down one of the size 11 seed beads down here to the bottom, and we still have plenty of wiggle room here, right? So I haven't made a tight loop there. I've made a real open loop so that our button has some movement. Our seed bead is offset. It's not up here right next to it. It's back just a hair so that there is some open air between there. And now we're going to repeat that. We're going to thread on another one of our buttons. And we're going to thread on one of those kind of coffee creamer, really light beige color buttons. Both strands through the holes. Suzanne says, might use our sentence enhancers? You might. All right, so I've pulled that one down, and now we're going to take those 2 strands again and very, very gently finesse those through another one of our seed beads. And luckily, you're only going to do this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times, and not in a row. So the entire necklace is not taking both strands through these tiny little seed beads, but we'll work it out. All right, going slow. Whoops. Gotta have a lot of patience today, right? And that's okay. I've got it because it's not Monday. I feel like if it were Monday, I might have less. All right, so with this one, I've thread one through by itself, and now I'm just going to kind of coax the other one through. And you can see I'm kind of pulling the other one. Oh my gosh. Good morning, Lisa. We're having a beady adventure this morning, trying to get 2 strands of 19 strand wire through 2 seed beads, or through 1 seed bead rather. 2 strands through 1 seed bead. There we go. All right. And then when you see that very, very tip of those poking out, just grab them. One of them a little bit easier to work with than the other. All right, there we go. Got it. So that's how it's going to be today. All right, so I'm just going to slide that one down, and you can see, again, I've left plenty of room so you can see that bead stringing wire on either side of that button. There is some movement that's going to happen here. They're going to space everything out, and I'm going to try my best to kind of keep it as even as I can with this other side that I've already made. So I really want my buttons and my beads to try to line up as much as possible, okay? All right, so we're going to thread on another one of these beautiful tiny buttons, and this time we're going to use this really pretty cream color. And we're going to take both ends through either one of the two holes on that button, and we're going to pull that down. And now we are going to wiggle these two wires again through a seed bead. And luckily, guys, we only have to do this a couple more times in this necklace. The rest of this is going to go much, much quicker, but that's all right, right? We're learning, we're watching. We're seeing Sara not use her sentence enhancers on a live. All right, so I've got one through there already. Gonna just kind of wiggle, wiggle till I get both and grab them. So it might actually be easier, you guys. I don't know if you know, but there are needles, there's both. There are needles that are specifically designed to go on the very, very end of your bead stringing wire. And you could probably attach one of those needles and make quicker work of wiggling those two strands through the seed bead for sure. All right, so there's that. We're going to add one more button going this direction. Okay, so I'm going to take one of the purple buttons, this really soft, beautiful kind of lavender color, bring that guy down too, and then we're going to go through one more of those beads, and then we're going to switch it up a little bit, kind of change up the pattern here. So you can see how it's starting to fray right there on the end where I've been kind of mashing it with my pliers. I'm going to trim those off so they've got a nice little end, and I just trimmed off the tiniest bit, you guys. Just a little snip off the end of that bead stringing wire is all you need. And then wiggle those two ends. Whoops, if I can even find the sometimes the seed beads, one is fussier than another, right? All right, there, I got it that time. All right, wiggle both of those through. And I can see just the tip of that bead stringing wire. We've almost got it. There we go, got it. Okay, so pull that next seed bead all the way down, and again, just kind of want to space that out so that there's plenty of wiggle room, and then I want to check next to the other strand. So I want to pull, I want to kind of adjust everything just a little bit. So that looks pretty close. All right, so we finished that portion of the necklace, so we're not going to do the entire the entire necklace that way. It would take a really, really long time. It would be beautiful, don't get me wrong. It would be really, really beautiful, but it would be very time consuming. So if you want to dive in and use this pattern for the entire necklace, please feel free to do so. Just give yourself lots of grace and be super, super patient. All right, so what we're going to do though, we are going to switch this up. So we're going to have one strand with nothing and one strand with some beads and buttons, and then we're going to come back down to the single bead again, and we're going to do 4 of those. So you can see our 4 little groupings here. Okay, so we're going to take one of our strands, and I'm going to move the other one out of the way, and we're going to alternate. I'm going to thread on a seed bead and one of our buttons, and since it's a 2-hole button, I'm only going through one of the holes. Okay, that's going to give extra movement. It's going to treat this seed bead more like, this button more like a bead. Another seed bead and one of the creamy, kind of coffee creamer color buttons. Thread that on. Another seed bead. Another one of our buttons, and this time we're going through one of these really kind of beautiful off-white colors. a seed bead, and then one of these really pretty purples. Okay, now we're going to bring that down, and we're going to have one more seed bead on there. All right, so now one strand that's going to run across this is not going to have anything on it, and it's just going to kind of run across the top, really just showing off even more that beautiful bead stringing wire. You guys, when you wear this bead stringing wire out in the sun, it's so pretty. The light, or just really pretty indoor lighting, really catches this bead stringing wire and makes it really sparkle. So even though it's very thin, and you know, it doesn't take much from the design, like when you look at it, it almost disappears into the design. When the light hits it, it really shows off that beautiful gold color, or the silver if you're using the silver. All right, so again, we are taking the two strands, both of them through a seed bead. We're just really kind of using these seed beads as our spacers. I'm going to bring that down, evenly space that one out. All right, so that's what that little section is going to look like, and we're just going to repeat. So one strand's not going to have anything on it, and the other strand is going to have a seed bead, a button, a seed bead, and a button. So there's one. And I do want to keep that same pattern going as far as the colors. So we've got the green, whoops, and then we're going to put this light beige color, the off-white, whoops, and then that purple color. Hi, it's okay that you're late. We don't mind. All right, so we have the two strands, and now we are going to take these and put them down here. So Tracy's question is, are these button mixes available on the Dress It Up or on the Jesse James Beads website? Well, at the moment, our Dress It Up Buttons website is under construction, and you guys, it's going to be so good. I cannot wait to see it. And so at the moment, you cannot get these on the Dress It Up site. However, there are some buttons that are available over on the Jesse James Bead site, as well as the bead stringing wire, these little seed beads that I'm fighting with today, and all of your other jewelry making things that you might need are available over there. As of right this second, these buttons are not on the site, but let me see if I can get Sarah to put them on the site. Otherwise, you definitely can grab these at Walmart. So Walmart always has a really great selection of Dress It Up buttons. All right, so let's see. We're going to do another strand with our seed bead and a button, a seed bead. Uh-oh. I'm just throwing seed beads all over the place, you guys. This is where that love-hate relationship with the seed beads comes in, because I love them, but sometimes they don't love me back, right? All right, we're going to thread on another one of our buttons, and I love using the mini buttons this way. I just love, in general, using any button this way, turning a button into a bead, right? That is just... it's so unexpected, and it really makes unique pieces of jewelry that you're definitely not going to see anywhere else. All right, so there is our pattern, one strand with our little buttons and our seed beads, and now we're going to have to take those two strands again through one seed bead, and we're going to make one more little section of our buttons and beads. And I'm going to show you guys how to finish this necklace off, And then I'll put it on a bust so that you can see it, because the results are well worth the struggle with the seed beads and the 2 strands. And really, a lot of this has to do with the fact that I'm really kind of far away from my hands as far as the way that I'm sitting. So if I were to like get way down onto this, I would really have an easier time, but then my head would be in the shot. There we go. It's like once you get that seed bead to sit on there, you can wiggle him down, but it's all about getting those 2 right in the sweet spot. All right. I've got it. I don't got it. Just kidding. Oh goodness. This was such a good idea yesterday. Let me trim off my strands, and that might help a little bit, just to have a nice fresh cut on the end of the bead stringing wire. Oh, thank you, Tracy. All right, so I'm actually going to give up on that part, and we're just going to thread on 1 because we're so close to the end here. Actually, let me try one more time to do it with 1 already thread on there. I just don't want to keep you guys here forever as I struggle with this seed bead, because we can definitely improvise, and I'll show you how. Actually, I got that one. Just as I spoke up, the seed bead was like, no, don't replace me. I got it. Okay. There we go. All right, so we've got 1 more of these sections. And just so you know that if you wanted to, instead of taking the 2 strands through one of those seed beads, because I'm clearly fighting with that, and that's just really kind of part of it, because the beads are very tiny. But if you wanted to, you could still include these beautiful seed beads in between your buttons, and in the place where I'm using a seed bead to come down as kind of the great divider of our little sections here, you could use a crimp in between here instead, and that might work a little bit easier. It's definitely going to have a bigger hole for you to use to get those both of those strands through, and you don't even have to crimp it if you don't want to. It's just going to fall in as just like a little tiny gold bead. So that's a really good alternative. And then you can still do, just like I'm doing, alternating a button with a seed bead. So you're still going to have that pop of beautiful color from these tiny Victorian buttons and the peach sherbet seed beads, but without the frustration that I'm facing here by trying to get both of these strands through a single 11 seed bead. So you've got options. You can do this exact same design, but kind of take some of the frustration out of it if you don't want to fight with the seed beads, because they are so tiny, and I really definitely would recommend like getting right up on it just to see, because really that's the issue more than anything, is getting both of the ends and not losing a seed bead, which I keep doing. There are going to be seed beads all over this room by the time I'm done with this. All right, so let's just forego that. Let me show you what it would look like if we used a seed bead instead. I mean a crimp bead instead. Hold on, let me grab, let's see. I've got, well, I'm just going to use a tube because that's what I have on hand. But you could use just a regular seed bead. I mean, gosh, I've got seed beads on the brain. Crimp bead here instead, right? and you would just put it in place, and you can see it slides on so much easier than trying to wiggle those two strands, right? And you don't even have to crimp this. It's just going to be a bead. The tube doesn't look as pretty, I don't think, as just a regular crimp bead would look, but it's up to you. You know, they both have their place and look good either way. Okay, so to finish this off, we're going to use 2 crimp beads. Fighting with your craft supplies is just part of the creative process. Yes, Tracy, that is true. And you know, I don't even like, I'm frustrated with the seed beads, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad that I showed it to you and you got to see the frustration of taking the 2 strands through a seed bead, because it just goes to show you that not every single thing that you do is going to be absolutely perfect every single time. And you know, you do have to give yourself grace and be patient when it comes to those little tedious things, right? But there's always an alternative, and I've got to show you, I got the opportunity to show you the alternative to this, which is going to look just as good regardless. So yeah, it's a process. It's a learning process, and everybody, you know, everybody goes through it. So we're going to use 2 crimp beads to finish this off, and I'm going to leave this long section here of just the 2 exposed wires side by side, just because I really like the way that this bead stringing wire looks. And I'm going to thread on a crimp tube onto both strands, and I want to measure my other side here and kind of figure out how, let me move some of this stuff out of the way so that I can lay this down and figure out exactly where I want to place my crimp before I crimp it, because I want these both to be the same length. So that first crimp should go right here. So I'm just going to hold with my thumb to keep that crimp bead from sliding down even further, and I'm going to come in with my crimper tool, and I'm just going to crimp that onto both of the bead stringing wires. Okay, so I'm using the back notch of my crimper tool, and then I'm going to put it in that front notch to really kind of clean up that crimp and just make it really small and compact. And be sure you get a really good crimp on that. You don't want a crimp failure here, because you will regret it after this next step. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one of these off. And you only need one, right, to finish this. So now I have one end. I'm going to thread on another crimp tube, right? So we're going to have 2 crimp tubes side by side. And then I'm going to loop this through a jump ring that already has my clasp attached to it. You can thread this through a wire guardian if you want to. You can thread it through, you can forego the jump ring altogether and just thread it through your clasp. A lot of different options when it comes to finishing off, but you just need to finish off with 1 strand. It's a much better connection to cut down to 1 strand than to try, just like we did with our seed beads earlier, to take 2 strands and put 2 strands and crimp 2 strands inside of a crimp bead. That's never a good idea. So whenever you can bring it down to 1, that's definitely what my recommendation is. I don't recommend crimping 2 strands inside 1 crimp tube or crimp bead. So crimping that one and then just cleaning it up a little bit, and we're going to come in with our cutter tool and trim off the tail. And that's it. You've got a really cool, definitely a unique look. You can cover these up with crimp tubes or crimp covers if you want to. But you don't have to, right? I usually don't. I usually just kind of leave it. But you've got a really fun necklace where you're using some unexpected things, right? You're using your seed beads with some tiny buttons, and that's definitely not something that you see every day. You can work up all kinds of different patterns with your bead stringing wire and your buttons to make some really interesting looks as far as the length of your necklace is concerned. You could certainly do this with cotton cord. You could do this with silk, right? Some of the silk cords, and the silk cords have the added advantage of having a needle on the end, which would definitely help when going through the seed beads for sure. But just a really kind of interesting look for a necklace, and I think a fun use of these little tiny buttons. They do look a lot like candy when you put them on here. It looks like, remember those candy necklaces and candy bracelets you used to get as a kid? That's what it reminds me of. So it definitely has like that nostalgic feel to it in so many different ways, right? On so many different levels. Okay, so let me put this on the bust, and I'll turn you around so that you can see what it looks like hanging, because it really is such a pretty necklace, even though it gave me such a struggle today. That's all right, because the results were definitely worth it. This is like a very beautiful springtime kind of necklace that we've got going on. All right, gonna flip this around. You guys, hello, hello. All right. Excuse me. All right, so when you've got it hanging, you can see just how fun and different this is, right? So we've got this beautiful pendant that was in our Vintage Vogue. I want to be sure I'm saying that right, because I feel like I always get it wrong. Our Vintage Vogue package, using all of the Tiny Victorian little buttons, these micro minis that are so fun and can be used in so many different ways. They really add a touch of movement to this. With that open bead stringing wire, everything on this piece is going to move, right? And that just makes jewelry fun. That gives it life and personality, which I look for in pieces. So definitely a fun, different, unexpected, right, kind of design, and I'm all about the unexpectedness of jewelry. So I thought this was a lot of fun. I know we struggled with the seed beads, but I can't be mad at it, because that's just part of the process. Everybody goes through those kinds of things, and you know, it just goes to show you that we're all in the same boat when it comes to things like that. So all right, you guys, that is it. I'm going to take some really pretty pictures of this so that I can get those posted for you guys. Are you sure it's not Monday? It definitely feels like a Monday around here. I'm going to get some pictures of this taken, and I will post those for you guys to see. Thank you so much for joining me today. Maggie says, love my hair today. Thank you. This is like my, I don't know, it just kind of reminds me of like my Japanese warrior princess. I can't even talk today. I need to go back to bed and start over. Anyway, oh goodness. Thank you guys for joining me. Don't forget, if you want some of this bead stringing wire, you can add this to your cart over on Jessie James Beads and get a free package of wire with the code I am sorry, 19 strand. I was getting that mixed up. I almost said free strand, but it's 19 strand. That's the coupon code for that. This is the Mondayest Tuesday ever. I agree with you, Suzanne. I need to just like start over again. Okay, you guys, enough of me, because there is no telling what other disasters I have in store for today, and I probably need to do those without being live. So you guys have a great rest of the day. I will see you guys again, same time, same place next week, and you can always catch me over on the Jessie James Beads Facebook page for Facebook Lives. I'll see you on Thursday if you want to join me for those at 11 a.m. All right. Have a great rest of the day, you guys. Bye.